Hi guys, Coach Abby back at it again for another Trainer Tip Thursday. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between aerobic and anaerobic exercise. So let's start with the basics. Both aerobic and anaerobic exercise support the cardiovascular system. They use two main energy pathways, being aerobic and anaerobic, and we'll jump into that a little bit more here shortly. Aerobic exercise helps increase your endurance, whereas anaerobic exercise is primarily helping increase your muscle mass and your overall strength and or power. So we briefly mentioned that they use different pathways. Aerobic exercise uses a pathway that has the use of oxygen. So anytime you see the word aerobic, it means with oxygen. The American College of Sports Medicine defines aerobic exercise as any activity that uses large muscle groups. So you can think of that as our lower half or our upper half, and can be maintained continuously and is rhythmic in nature. And by rhythmic, it's just more of repetitive movement, such as running. Aerobic training yields a higher number of calories burned during the actual activity. However, it may not burn more than anaerobic exercise, and we'll touch on that here shortly. During aerobic training, typically your body is going to be using fat as its primary fuel, and this typically involves our slow twitch muscles. The energy demands of aerobic exercise are typically slower, and that's why they are more easily used or met by fat. During aerobic training, your body is going to be adapting in a manner that leaves you storing more fuel in the form of intercellular glycogen and triglycerides, which are more forms of fat. And basically, in the non-scientific terms, that's telling your body that you need to store fat, which may mean that you're less lean. Oftentimes, people such as long-distance runners, or people who maybe prefer going to the gym and just jumping on the elliptical, they may be what's termed skinny fat. And the reason being is because of that idea above mentioning that your body wants you to store fat or hold on to that fat because it is the primary fuel for an aerobic exercise. Some examples of aerobic exercises would be running long distance at a leisurely pace for a longer amount of time, swimming, dancing, hiking, and cycling. Other things could be the elliptical, rowing machines, a ski erg, anything that you're doing for an extended period of time at a sustained and steady pace. On the other side of things, we have our anaerobic exercise. This is something that does not require oxygen, and it is defined as intense physical activity for a very short duration. It's primarily fueled by carbohydrates, and it's the contraction of muscles independent of the use of oxygen. So again, we are not using oxygen to do anaerobic exercise. This primarily involves our faster twitch muscles, and like I mentioned, it's fueled by carbohydrates, which means typically we are burning less calories during the actual session, so less calories than a normal aerobic session, but there is this thing that we call Epoc, which we'll discuss here shortly. So Epoc is a shortened version for excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. And this means that your body is going to continue burning calories for several hours and in some cases, up to 2 days after your session has concluded. This is one of our largest goals at Fit Body Bootcamp. We really understand that with HIIT training, you can spike your heart rate, you can burn calories during your session, but with high intensity interval training, you are also burning calories at rest for the remainder of the day, for the remainder of the next 2 days. And again, that's where we get our fat loss at FBBC. Anaerobic exercises are things such as sprinting, like I mentioned before, high intensity interval training, which is what we do at boot camp, and other things like powerlifting. It's short in duration, you're using a lot of fast twitch muscles, and you have recovery time as well. So why is this important for us to know and understand? First, because we have various goals, and there's this thing called periodization, and certain people want to build muscle, certain people want to have high endurance levels, and some people want to primarily lose fat. So understanding that both of these have different fuel sources. Aerobic is fueled mostly by our fats, whereas carbohydrates are what fuels our anaerobic exercise. Knowing those things, obviously knowledge is power, but knowing those things, you can better maximize your training for the goals that you want to meet. All right, that's all we've got today. Happy Thursday. We'll see you next week.